I'm Roger Williams. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Sean. It's great to be here. So first of all, I will say that everything that I am going to show you today is also on 10crucialdays.org. So you will be able to see all of this art on 10crucialdays.org/art. It's very simple. 10 Crucial Days is a organization that really pulls together what happened during the famous crossing and the battles of Trenton, Assunpink Creek, and Princeton. We give tours, but we also recommend books. I even publish some books about the 10 Crucial Days. But our mission is really to tell our fellow citizens what happened here in our backyard, at the Falls of the Delaware and in Princeton. So I have 125 slides. So in 1 hour, that means 2 minutes per slide. We're not going to spend 2 minutes per slide. We're going to spend 5 minutes on some slides, and I'm just going to zip through some other slides because it's just a lot. If there is another battle or campaign other than Gettysburg in American military history that has more art, I would like to know what it is, because there is, I think, more art about the 10 Crucial Days of the American Revolution than any other military campaign in American history. Now, of course, this campaign took place 6 months after the Declaration of Independence. So we had a head start, but one could argue easily that had it not been for these 10 Crucial Days, that declaration would have fizzled out, and that would have had to come to a different time that we gained our independence. And what we're going to learn here is that all of this art that we are going to see is either propaganda or it tells us more about the artist than history, because what we are looking at is what artists think what happened. There were very few artists who were in this compilation who were actually even here. So, and of course, there was no photography back then. So this is what the artists imagined, or what we learned about history up to that point, or more to the point, the message that the artist was trying to convey about these 10 Crucial Days. So with that, we will take a look at the art, the imagery, and the parody of the 10 Crucial Days. This is a walk through the museum, an art gallery, if you will, and it is separated into these separate galleries: the Prelude, the Crossing, March, the Battle of Trenton, the Battle of Assunpink Creek, the Battle of Princeton, Statuary Hall, and then a modern art gallery. So as we start, this is the Prelude. Now, this is not actually of the 10 Crucial Days, but this mural, which is at 23 South Warren Street on the side of a building, is July 8th reading of the Declaration of Independence in front of Hunterdon County Courthouse. Of course, that was Hunterdon County at the time. Where we are right now on the south bank of the Assunpink Creek was Burlington County. So it was the Assunpink Creek separated the two counties. Lila Barger was commissioned to do this and another piece that we will see later on, but it's quite dramatic. Now, this is, again, part of the prelude to the 10 Crucial Days, Howard Pyle's famous painting referred to as the retreat through the Jerseys. The Jerseys at that time, we were two provinces, really. Technically, we were one state, but in many of the writings, it was referred to as the Jerseys, East and West. So this is the retreat through the Jerseys. Howard Pyle's 1898 painting. And though you see, one of the things that I found interesting about this painting is the little slivers of ice and water on the road. They're all dressed up, in their winter, in the winter here, but most of these soldiers were wearing their summer uniforms, so it doesn't really show that. But now, this John Philip Osborne painting shows what was called McConkey's Ferry. This is what is Washington Crossing today. Unfortunately, we don't think the house really looked like that. It looks like a painting of the house that's there now that was built in 1834. McConkey's house was really a two-story wooden structure. So, but still, I think it's a dramatic rendition with the clouds. So now we go to the crossing. First, again, John Philip Osborne, the overture to the crossing. I think Osborne gets a nice sense of drama, really, with his portrayal of the landscape. Now we have, there's quite a few pieces of art by what are called the Davis Gray Studios. Davis Gray Studios were up in Hunterdon County near Flemington. And this was actually a group of artists who were all in one room, and a painting was moved from one artist to the next, and each artist had a different color. So you had the artist who had blue and the artist who had yellow, and they would pass the painting around the table and finish all of these pieces of art. So these are all on display at the Washington Crossing State Park in New Jersey. It is again using the wrong building here. So if you see the building, that is the 1834 building that is at Washington Crossing right now, not the building that was there at the time. So also throughout this presentation, you're going to see a lot of prints. Currier Knives is a noted printmaker in the 19th century. This is Currier Knives, and we don't know all of the artists for Currier Knives prints. This one happens to be John Cameron, who was well known during that period of time, did a lot of work for Harper's and a lot of other magazines. So the prints obviously were for mass distribution. That's another point that I should have made earlier. So much of what we see is art. The artists thought that they could make money from this. So that this is not only just art and history, but it's also merchandise. Here we've got another unnamed artist from the American School, where they are preparing for the crossing. This one I thought was very interesting, that has the pointillism here with the snow, showing the snow of on the night of the crossing. Here again, with Peter Fiore's, you also see the snow, and it's dark, and note the size of the boats that they are in. This is a rendition of the famous Durham boats that actually did the crossing. We'll talk a little bit more about those with some of our other paintings. Another Peter Fiore, which I love. This is actually portrays the soldiers on the New Jersey bank, officers standing around the fire there. And again, you see the Durham boat in the background of this painting over toward the right there. But what's interesting about this is how he managed to create this painting of an event that took place at night. So it's dark, but he used the campfire, obviously, to shine the light on what was going on. 1876, there's quite a few pieces of art that were produced for the bicentennial, or for the centennial, rather. Okay, so for the centennial, and this being one, is from Harrington Fitzgerald, who was a popular American artist of the time. This particular painting hangs at the Museum of the American Revolution. And again, this is at the Jersey Bank and they are preparing to march. You can see off to the right on that painting, there are soldiers and horsemen who are heading off to the right. This is a famous Thomas Sully painting. Thomas Sully was one of the early American artists one of the earliest, I should say, American artists to create an image of the 10 crucial days. So this really would have been the first painting of the crossing that was created by an artist back in 1819. We all recognize this. Yes, ma'am, you have a question.
I take the horse too.
I'm sorry?
Did they take the horse?
Oh, they certainly took the horses across. There were anywhere from 80 to 95 horse that they took across, which is the reason why they were at a ferry crossing, because they needed the flat bottom ferry boats to get the horses and the cannon across that night. So now we all recognize this, obviously. This is, I think, I've been saying this for years now. Nobody's ever questioned this. This is absolutely the most famous painting in American military history, recognized throughout the world. When we have the school children who come to Washington Crossing on the Pennsylvania Bank, the one thing I say to all of these thousands of school kids that we see every semester is that what they are going to learn while they are there is that this painting is all historically wrong. Okay, so Emanuel Gottlieb Leutze from Prussia, painted this in 1851. Well, why in 1851? Well, he actually first started painting this painting in 1849. He finished a version of this painting in 1850. He didn't like it as much, and it was destroyed by some fire, so he started to paint a second one. What hangs at the Metropolitan Museum today is the second version of this famous Emanuel Leutze painting that we see. The first one, which stayed in Germany, was destroyed during World War II when British Avro-Lancaster bombers bombed the Bremen Museum. So now I want to spend a little bit of time on this painting. Why is it wrong? Well, first of all, that is the size of a Durham boat. These Durham boats were anywhere from 45 to 65 feet long, as opposed to what we call 13 men in a rowboat. As if you look at this, there are 13 men representing, obviously, the 13 colonies. And when we look at some of the other features of this famous painting, the crossing took place at night. So this obviously is not at night. It also took place during a nor'easter. So there was wind and hail and freezing rain. There's no wind or hail or freezing rain there on this painting. And the icebergs that you see in this painting, when we look at the Delaware during the winter time, there's no icebergs up at McConkey's Ferry. It is sheet ice. So those are just a few things that I would want to point out. The other thing I'd like to point out is over the soldier at the bow there with the pike, you see what looks like a star or a light. This is very symbolic, obviously. This is, if you look at the right side of the painting, this is George Washington and the Americans going from the dark to the light. This was obviously about the Enlightenment period, and this was the drama. Now, what was Emanuel Leutze painting this in 1851? Well, for all of you who have seen Les Mis, and you remember the revolution that was going on in France during that period of time, there were revolutions going around all over the place in Europe during that period of time, including Germany. And Emanuel Leutze from Prussia was sending a message to his other fellow city-states in the Holy Roman Empire to all join together with Prussia to become one Germany. That was his message. Now, it's ironic that these Americans are going across the river to attack Hessians, which was one of those city-states. So that's a little bit of irony there. But there are so many other things about this. That flag did not exist at the time. The Betsy Ross flag was not in existence at the time. But if you look behind the 13 men in a rowboat, you see the white horse on one of those flat-bottom ferry boats. That is correct. So that is a more correct rendition of what happened. So once again, we look at these Durham boats, and if you've never been to see the reenactment of the crossing, I certainly invite you to come the second Sunday of December and then on Christmas morning, and you will see all of these soldiers dressed up and getting into these boats. This painting is 21 feet by 12 feet. So I added this so that you could see just the sheer size. There is a life-size replica of this painting at the Washington Crossing, Pennsylvania Visitor Center, digital reproduction. This is an interesting version. You'll notice that on the right half of this painting, it's all dark, and on the left half, it's much lighter. That is because this painting is currently being refurbished this painting by George Matthew Harding is currently being refurbished and will hang at the visitor center on the New Jersey side of Washington Crossing, or what I refer to as Washington Landing. This is 15 by 9 feet, so it's not as big as the Leutze, and the boats are still too small in this painting, but you have them all huddled in. You know, one of the other things about these paintings is at least this one shows the soldiers standing up, whereas in the other painting, many of the soldiers were sitting down. Well, if you see those Durham boats, there's no seats in there. They were all standing up. So it wasn't just the glorious George Washington and what they refer to as James Monroe holding the flag. James Monroe did not cross with Washington, but that's, again, another one of those. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Yeah. She's asked about what this painting, it's commissioned. It was commissioned by the Taylor Opera House, Taylor being Taylor ham, pork roll, that was right here in Trenton. And that was what this painting was commissioned for that. And they actually just found this painting pre-COVID, rolled up. Where did they find it? You remember?
Ringwood.
In Ringwood. Okay, so they brought it down, and they're now the Washington Crossing State Park Association raised the funds to have it refurbished. So we're looking forward to seeing that. This is a version by Trenton's own William Pedrick of Washington Crossing the Delaware. And Pedrick wanted so much to be able to come up with a version that was more historically accurate. Well, it is darker, and there is a weather event going on here. But again, these weren't rowboats, these fellows across the river, and which is what, and he's got Washington standing up in a rowboat here once again. And I think the use of color in this was very interesting. It looks like they were using lanterns, not very many. I mean, they may have used torches of sorts, but the lanterns really would not have worked so well. This is, I think, one of the better renditions of at least the ferry boat. This shows from Lloyd Garrison. Now, again, it's still way too light out because it was the middle of the night. But Lloyd Garrison, who is also from New Jersey, has done a number of paintings on the events of the 10 Crucial Days. This by Mort Kunstler, who is one of America's most noted military art historians. It looks quite dramatic. And here you've got Washington standing in front of a cannon crossing, and the water is correct, but the ferry boat is way too big. I mean, it looks like there's about 40 guys, 50 guys on there. Not at all. I mean, these little ferry boats, the flat bottom ferry boats were about from here to the door, so about 40 feet. You know, they really were not that long. Certainly not enough to carry this many people on one boat. But there you see they've got the torch. Okay, so that's more accurate. George Caleb Bingham, I do not know. We do not know, or at least I couldn't find exactly when this was painted, but because it just kept coming up as circa 1856 to 1871. So somewhere during that period of his lifetime, um, uh, George Bingham created this. Now, what was interesting about George Bingham is that he was from St. Louis. He was from Missouri, and he was a frontier painter. But he studied in Philadelphia. So, of course, this was something that he came up with. He studied early on, so I believe that the date was somewhere closer to 1856 than 71. But this was Caleb's painting. And this is what happens to things when they go into public domain. They take a very famous painting and they make it almost cartoonish. But so, and this is available for a mere $400 from overstock.com, which I think is just absurd. But anyway, so now I could not find the name of the artist for this piece. But here you've got the boat's a little bit bigger. They're still sitting down. This was done in 1912, and you know, what drove the artist to paint this, I don't know. Again, there's no weather, but you know, you have to give these artists at least some license here, because if they were really to paint it accurate, it would just be a black canvas with some torches. You really wouldn't see a lot of these boats. So this is something that was painted rather recently. This is digital art. Okay, so now we're going into the realm of modern use of computers to create art. Notice that there's no faces in this at all, and it looks like there's a lot of snow and big icebergs. Yeah, no, that's not what happened at all. It also has another flag that didn't exist during that time. Here again, we've got digital art. This is, I find this one interesting. This is actually an artist who creates art for video games and for graphic novels. So it really has that sort of sense to it. And at least in this painting, you've got the soldiers wearing something over their face. Here you have some African-American soldiers holding lanterns, which I don't really think that they had. And the river is just way too wide, but still, that's an interesting piece. Now we're getting almost into the realm of cartoonish, but this is not parody. This artist actually was created this for a children's book. So that makes a little bit more sense. And at least that flag that they're carrying with the king's colors in the corner did exist at the time. They wouldn't have been carrying any flag with the king's colors at this time, though, but it did exist at the time. There are all forms of art. Here you can see the crossing memorialized and commemorated in the coin, the quarter for New Jersey. Okay. Of course, there's always a question as to really who takes more pride in this image, Leutze image. Is it Pennsylvania or New Jersey? Fact of the matter is it's both. This was all one campaign. Here you can see a worldwide how this painting is used worldwide as a glorious event. This was a stamp that was created in the early part of the 20th century for the country that is now Burkina Faso. It's a former French colony of what is it called? Upper Volta, yeah, Hope Volta, right, exactly. So here we've got Lloyd Garrison again. We saw one of Lloyd's works earlier. He actually has, this is the second painting that he has of the crossing. So earlier on, I should have put the other painting so you could see them side by side. But his first painting we had was with them going across the river. Here they are on the banks of the New Jersey bank. And what's interesting about this one is that Lloyd is suggesting that the ferry was hooked up to the cable that went across the river. We don't know if it was. We're not sure. We don't think so, but nobody has come up with anything definitive on whether or not the cable they were actually using cables that night. So now they've crossed the river. Now we're marching to Trenton. So I showed this one earlier, the Harrington Fitzgerald painting where they begin their march. Here in 1914, from the Mount Vernon Ladies Association, Edward Percy Moran, who was very well known at the time, has created this painting of the march into Trenton. What I find interesting about this is that if it were that light out with blue sky and clouds, it would not have been the morning of December 26th, because it was still snowing by the time they were walking into marching into Trenton at the time. So that part is wrong. But again, it's artistic license. So, and the other thing I found interesting about this is we saw very early on the retreat through the Jerseys. Look how similar they look, the two paintings. Okay. Here you've got Washington, both show Washington on his, what is referred to as his white horse. That was Blueskin, and that was the horse that he used during the campaign. So now I found almost haunting John Philip Osborne's rendition of the March to Trenton. Obviously, you can't make out what that is, but imagine this, if you will. If you are a farmer at 7 o'clock in the morning, standing near Trenton, looking across that hill and seeing all of these people marching towards you. Okay. What if you were a Hessian soldier and you saw all these soldiers marching towards you? Well, again, you wouldn't have, because it was foggy that morning and they were coming out of the mist. So when they actually marched into Trenton, it was under a shroud of fog. So they really could only see about 60 to 80 feet in front of them. So you wouldn't have seen this painting or this image, but still, I find it very haunting. This Don Troiani is now currently one of America's foremost military artists. He is a stickler for detail and for accuracy. So what he is showing here is the 3rd Virginia Regiment. The 3rd Virginia Regiment was the regiment in the vanguard of the march. They were up ahead of the march. That is the flag, the banner of the 3rd Virginia off to the right there. And these are the uniforms. The only thing that I asked Don about with this painting is, why'd you make them look all so well dressed? Because at this time their uniforms were a wreck. They were really not looking. These guys look nice and warm and cozy in those coats. They really weren't like that. But still, I think this is a wonderful painting. The other thing that was interesting about both this painting and this painting is that you don't see a lot of trees, and that's true. This was all windswept land. Now, today we drive around New Jersey in the farmlands and we see trees everywhere. That would have been true in on the western part of New Jersey. If you draw a line and down Route 27 from New Brunswick down Route 206 to right here in Trenton, Everything to the west of that was the Piedmont. And that's where you start getting the rolling hills and the forests and the trees. Everything to the east of that is the Atlantic coastal plain, which is why Trenton is where it is. This was the falls of the Delaware. And the falls are rapids, really. This is the farthest north an ocean-going ship could go. So anyway, that's that had to do with the trees. So now we go into the Battle of Trenton. I'm not even looking at time here, but see how far we can get. Map as art. So this was actually drawn by Lieutenant Andreas Wiederholt of the Royal Regiment before the attack. And Wiederholt took part in the attack. In fact, it was his detachment that was attacked first, right up by the Trenton Reservoir. And this was Wiederholt's map of Trenton at the time. If you look at this in detail, it's incredibly detailed for that time. And he's got listed where each of the regiments were, where each of the houses in Trenton were. It's a very detailed map. Here we've got a more modern map. This is for sale at the Old Barracks Museum, done in 1994 by an artist named John Wright. And this is a wonderful rendition of what Trenton looked like back in 1776. You have the King and Queen Street running parallel down toward the Assunpink Creek. And this also shows the battle movements of the different regiments during the battle. Now we get into art of the battle, and there are two pieces here from Hugh McBarron, and these were done for the bicentennial. So you've got, now what's interesting about all of these paintings about the Battle of Trenton is note how they all sort of focus on the cannon. Okay, and this is the Hessian, one of the 6 Hessian cannon that were in town at the time. And this cannon was placed right near the intersection of Perry Street and Warren Street, today's Perry and Warren Street, right outside of St. Michael's Church, which was there during the battle. So there you've got the Hessian cannon that is in place. And here again is the capture of the Hessian cannon. Now we've got a piece by Lloyd Garrison, who we've seen before. And again, it's the Hessian cannon that the painting is focused on. This one is also with the cannon right in the center of this 18th century print. And you've got the Americans swooping into Trenton. What I found fascinating about this particular 19th century print is that it was created by the lithography firm of Heppenheimer and Maurer. Heppenheimer and Maurer, that intrigued me. So I went and found out who these guys were. They were both born in, they both emigrated from Hesse-Cassel in 1851. So these were Hessians who lived here in America. In fact, Friedrich Heppenheimer was a captain in the 5th New Jersey Volunteers during the Civil War. But here again, in 1875, for the centennial, they're creating this lithograph of the battle in which their soldiers from their state were being attacked by the Americans. I just found that interesting. This one's a well-known lithograph. I do not know who the artist is. I really want to find out, because this is the image that you see most often about the Battle of Trenton. And notice on the right side how all of the soldiers are all lined up. It almost looks like they were Xeroxed, copied, one right after the other. We see that in a few paintings. Here again, you've got sort of in the back there, you've got more of the soldiers all lined up in a row like that. This particular lithograph was for Harper's Magazine in 1853. Here is one of those Davis Gray images that's at Washington Crossing State Park. Here you've got the Americans attacking the Hessians at the barracks. Yeah, that didn't happen. The Hessians were not at the barracks at all. Their camp followers and some loyalists were in the barracks during the battle, but the Hessians were not. So that didn't exist. Here's our friend Don Troiani again, showing the image of Rohl, the Hessian commander, Johann Gottlieb Rohl's mortal wound. He was shot twice off of his horse and died the next morning, which prompted the surrender of the Hessians, one of two surrenders that day. This is by Pamela White, another noted military historian. This is not of Trenton, but I find it a fascinating piece of art because it was the Hessian Jagerkorps who were involved in this battle, and this is an accurate reproduction of what the Jagerkorps looked like. With these uniforms, these green uniforms with the red facings. They were at the Jagerkorps was billeted at the Hermitage, which was Philemon Dickinson's house on today's what's it called? Colonial Avenue in Trenton. So most of the Jagerkorps managed to escape the battle that day. They got across the Assunpink Creek and got away. Here's one of the renditions by Edward Moran. We've seen him before. And so he obviously was in his Revolutionary War mode at the time because he painted them all in 1914. Here is the surrender of the Hessian colors being given to Washington. Here's another rendition. This one, now we see John Trumbull. John Trumbull is one of America's foremost artists. And this is the image of the mortally wounded Rohl being presented to Washington up on his horse. Notice the halo around Washington. Okay, that's Trumbull was known for this kind of paleography in his art. So this is another one of Lilia Barger's murals in Trenton at 111 East Hanover Street, 25 feet by 15 feet. This was huge. And it's often gone missed, but it's up on top of a building, and it's got different separate scenes of the battle, which I find is fascinating. So that is a Trenton landmark, if you will. And hopefully the church, the First Presbyterian at 120 West State Street, is raising a lot of money to turn that entire area into an artist, into a little art cove in Trenton. I hope that happens. Now we go to the Battle of Assunpink Creek. What is the Battle of Assunpink Creek? Well, for those of you who live in Trenton or close by, you may know that the Assunpink Creek runs right through the middle of Trenton. This battle is often dismissed as the Second Battle of Trenton. It was not really the Second Battle of Trenton. It was actually the First Battle of Princeton. And it took, because the army was completely different for the First Battle of Trenton to the Battle of Assunpink Creek. Completely different army that Washington had at his disposal. And of the three battles, the Battle of Trenton, the Battle of Princeton, the Battle of Assunpink Creek, which was much more significant. Whereas the Battle of Trenton took about 45 minutes. The Battle of Princeton took maybe an hour and 15 minutes. The Battle of Assunpink Creek took place from 9 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock at night. And there were more soldiers on both sides that were killed. I'm sorry, in both the British and the Hessian regiments that were killed in the Battle of Assunpink Creek than there were in Princeton. So it was much more significant. So here you've got the Continentals on the south bank of the Assunpink Creek. This is sort of a nighttime view by our friends at the Davis Studios. This is, I think, an excellent portrayal by a British artist named Graham Turner, showing the Virginia Regiment with the Associators who are on the south bank of the Assunpink Creek. all of these images of the Assunpink Creek, you're going to notice that the mill house is the focus in the middle of all of these paintings. That mill house does not exist anymore, but it was right there on what is today South Broad Street. So here we've got probably the most accurate rendition. This is on the banks of the Assunpink Creek at night. I actually should have put that one first before the battle started. Here we've got George Bradshaw, also a Trenton native, who has done this pen and ink drawing of the Battle of Assunpink Creek. And there again, you've got the mill house right in the middle there, right at the Queen Street Bridge, which was the one bridge that John Adams would have had to cross to go to Congress on his route from Boston to Philadelphia. That bridge across the Assunpink Creek was a vital way to get across the Assunpink Creek to come down here just south of where we are now to take the South Ferry across the Delaware River to head to Philadelphia. So there again, you've got the mill house right in the center of this pen and ink, or no, this was a woodcut, sorry. And look at, again, on the left side there, how the soldiers are all bunched up, and also on the bridge, how they're all bunched up like, you know, like little wooden soldiers there. So now we go to the Battle of Princeton. This is a painting, and I don't know, this is another one where I've got to find out who this artist is. But here you've got Washington and his officers all at the Douglas House, which stands right now at the in Trenton, right near Montgomery Street, and trying to determine what their move was going to be. Is it Montgomery Street? No, it's not Montgomery Street. It's not. Now the Davis Gray Studios show us marching toward Princeton, and that little structure that you see there was the Quaker Friends Meeting House, which still exists to this day. So that one is quite a nice image. Here again, you don't see many trees, and that was very, very true. You go to Princeton Battlefield today, you see trees all around you. Nope, there were no trees. This was not specifically for the 10 Crucial Days, but Arthur Lefferts, who did a huge portfolio of images of the Revolutionary War soldiers. It says our battery is running low here, Sam. And this is actually a reasonably accurate portrayal of the British Grenadiers who fought at the Battle of Princeton. Lefferts was not always known for his accuracy, but this one I thought I included because this one was relatively accurate. It's charging. Okay, good. Okay, make that go away. Okay, you still see this? Yes. Okay. I love this piece. This is the only piece of art I have found on this specific incident. What this piece of art shows you is the British 17th Regiment of Infantry on the top of Corcoran's Hill. Corcoran's Hill is where, for those of you who live locally, where Yashna Polana is on Route 206. And it was at 7 o'clock in the morning when the British 17th Regiment of Infantry were 800 soldiers of the British 17th were marching towards Trenton, thinking that they were reinforcing Cornwallis, who was here in Trenton, that they were going to fight a battle in Trenton. Well, that didn't happen because Washington completely hoodwinked Cornwallis and brought his entire army in the middle of the night to Princeton. Here, the British are looking around on top of Corcoran's Hill, and they see to the east, 1 mile on the farms of Thomas and William Clark, the soldiers, the American soldiers marching towards Princeton. So British 17th turn around, and here they are marching through the Stony Brook Quaker community, which Stony Brook Quaker community existed before the town of Princeton. And it is right along the Stony Brook there in Princeton. Here we have the British soldiers marching at the quick step to get back to Princeton to defend Princeton against these advancing Americans. Here again, map as art. We've got the placement showing the British in Trenton, down at the bottom left there. There were the British 16th Light Dragoons were in Maidenhead, which is today's Lawrence Township. And the bulk of the American army is now in Princeton, surrounding 3 British regiments, the 17th, the 50th, and the 44th regiments of infantry. So that is, and here you've got the map artist sort of showing us the topography with Stony Brook going around where today's battlefield is. This was commissioned recently, actually by me, and the Princeton Battlefield Society. This is John Wright. You may have remembered John Wright in his image of the Battle of Trenton. This is what Princeton and the Princeton area looked like in 1777. Notice that there are no trees. I mean, from Stony Brook all the way into town, there were these small little woodlots, but there were really no trees of note in there. So it's wide open land. And this shows the farmland of Thomas Clark and his brother William Clark. Now we've got scenes of the battle. Here's our Davis Gray showing the what is referred to as the affair at the orchard. This was at the farm of William Clark, where General Hugh Mercer and about 300 Continentals thought that they were just going after a few dragoons, but lo and behold, coming out of the orchard were about 600 of those grenadiers with fixed bayonets. Mercer was to be mortally wounded at that affair. After the British had these fixed bayonets, they charged into there were again 600 to 800 of these grenadiers. They charged into the Americans. There were only about 300 of them, and they retreated very quickly. And this is an unknown artist showing that bayonet charge. Here is another rendition of that bayonet charge with very accurate portrayal of the not only the Pennsylvania Associators in the brown uniform with the red facing, but they also have a Marine there. There were Marines. The Battle of Assunpink Creek and the Battle of Princeton were actually the very first land battles that the United States, what we know today as the United States Marine Corps, fought in. That was where Captain William Shippen of the Pennsylvania Marines was actually killed. He was one of the first Marines killed in battle. So now we've got some of these prints. Here is Mercer being bayoneted by the British. Why the British are wearing blue and Mercer wearing red, I have no idea. That's completely opposite of it. This was probably a colored, colorized print. This is the John Trumbull's very famous painting on the Battle of Princeton, with Mercer set right in the center of the painting on the with the British soldiers surrounding him and bayoneting him. You have John Hazlitt of the Delaware Regiment is being killed off to the left there. And of course, George Washington, again, with the light coming around his head under a tree, which this is something else that Trumbull was well known for. He would always put these sort of mysterious branch of these trees that some people say that's supposed to be the Mercer oak. Frankly, it would have been a twig at that point. But there you've got the British battle, the Battle of Princeton. You have one of the wounded British soldiers here That is supposed to be William Leslie, who was mortally wounded at the battle. He was actually he was a very close friend of Benjamin Rush, and was buried in Pluckerman, New Jersey. His grave is still up there. William Leslie's grave. He was buried with military honors by the Americans up in Pluckerman, New Jersey, at the Presbyterian Church. Here's another one of 18th century print of Mercer being bayoneted. Now we've got, after Mercer's bayoneting and the rout of the Associators and Mercer's regiment, Washington turns around and rides in to save the day. Obviously, this Alonzo Chappell, who we're going to see a few of his paintings, he's gotten the message. He's got the light over Washington as well. But here you've got Washington, because what Washington did was absolutely insane. The British and the Americans were within 80 yards of each other, and Washington turns 2 regiments of New England soldiers around and heads smack right into the middle of this battle. And General Washington's aide was so terrified that Washington was going to be killed. He writes in his diary that he pulled his hat down because he just couldn't bear to see the general being killed, because he was in 40 yards of both the Americans and the British. So that event was captured in this and this and this and this. So you see Washington riding to the rescue. Okay. What's interesting about this, now you could argue that the Battle of Trenton was really Washington's first victory in the specifically George Washington's first field victory. Okay. Well, he didn't lead a charge, nor did he lead the charge at the Battle of Assunpink Creek. But the Battle of Princeton, Washington personally led the counterattack that turned the tide of the battle. Here again, you've got the soldiers all lined up like, little wooden soldiers. The flag is not correct in this painting, in this print. Here you've got Washington again. You see Washington up ahead of all the troops, leading the charge into the British line. Lloyd Garrison, who we've seen before, this shows that perfect rendition of Washington right smack in the middle of the British and the Americans. When Garrison was painting this, I was actually in his studio while he was in the middle of painting this. And I said, Lloyd, you've got this soldier down at the bottom here wearing no shoes, and all these guys look pretty ragged. Well, that was true at the Battle of Trenton, but it was not true at the Battle of Princeton. But he said, no, I want to keep it in there. It looks good. So that's why you have that young soldier with no shoes on. And if you look closely, he's got blood stains in the snow, and there was no snow on the field that day, but so be it. Again, that's artistic license. Here again, now you've got the Davis Gray, not Davis Wright. Davis Wright is actually a former president general of the Sons of the American Revolution. So obviously I had the Sons of the American Revolution in my mind when I typed that. So that's wrong, and I got to fix that. But here you've got Washington riding into the middle of the battle, with some wounded soldiers being taken off the battlefield. The only problem with this is that's supposed to be the Thomas Clark House, and Washington was nowhere near the Thomas Clark House when he rode into the battle. This is our friend Don Troiani, with Washington leading the counterattack. This one I find quite dramatic. And again, one of the things that we always appreciate with Troiani is that he gets the uniforms right. This is the Clark House. Clark House was not that big during the battle. It was about half that size, but Davis Gray Studios were not known for their historical accuracy. This was actually the very first painting of the Battle of Princeton. So this painting that we're looking at by James Peale was the very first painting of the 10 Crucial Days, the Battle of Princeton. James Peale was at the Battle of Princeton. So the artist was actually at this battle. And what we see here in this painting is the Continental Artillery Battery firing to the right side of the photo there, the British. Now, the only thing that's interesting about this is that if this were accurate, they would be switched. The Americans would be on the other side of the painting, the British would be over here. And the reason why I say that is because that structure that you see behind the British line is supposed to be Nassau Hall. So if you do the geography right, they were on opposite sides of the field. But once again, obviously, what James Peale wanted to show was the heroism of his comrades, and at this fantastic battle. This hangs at Princeton University. This is done by the American Battlefield Trust. I threw this in here. It is art, but I threw this in here to sort of give you a sense of, see how there's no trees? And you've got the Americans on one side, and there's a lot more of them closer to the bottom of the image there, with the British on the northwest side of the battlefield. The British are right where today's Mercer Road is. Of course, Mercer Road was not there then during the battle. After this battle, there I've got Davis Wright again. I got to fix that. From the Davis Gray studio. This is the surrender at Nassau Hall. And we've got this, which was the newest piece of art on the 10 Crucial Days, quite a dramatic image of the Quakers tending to the wounded of the battlefield, both British and American. So, and that happened, obviously. And that is the meeting house. I'm sorry, the Thomas Clark house, as it would have looked in 1777, that morning of 1777. James Peale's brother was Charles Wilson Peale, again, one of a noted artist. And Charles Wilson Peale was a very well-known portrait artist. And here we have two different renditions by Charles Wilson Peale, commissioned for different people, of George Washington at the Battle of Princeton. Now we're going to go quickly through the statuary hall, and you'll see some of the masonry work and statues of the 10 Crucial Days. This is at the Museum of the American Relief at the Museum of the American Revolution. Trenton Battle Monument that was dedicated in 1893. Four. Okay, these are some of the Thomas Aiken reliefs around the battle monument, along with the two soldiers at the entrance of the monument. This is at the Montgomery Plaza, right in the middle of Trenton, commissioned in 1876 for the centennial, obviously. I threw these in here. These are these obelisks. There are 12 obelisks that go from Trenton into Princeton that mark the approximate route of Washington's march from Trenton to Princeton. So they're all in different places. You go to 10crucialdays.org and you'll see on the About tab, you'll see where all of these obelisks are. I've actually got a little driving traffic map if you want to see where all these are. Here we are at Princeton University in 1923. Some reliefs that are on the outside of Henry Hall, the famous Princeton Battle Monument, 1922. The architect was Thomas Hastings. The sculptor was Frederick McMonnies. McMoney. So Thomas Walters, this is sometimes referred to as the Princeton Battle Monument. It is actually the colonnade at Princeton Battlefield, designed by Thomas Walter, who was the architect for the United States Capitol. He did not make this for Princeton Battlefield. He made this for St. George's Hall in 1836. It was the columns in front of St. George's Hall. And in 1900, they were moved to Mercer Manor in Princeton, New Jersey. In 1955, Mercer Manor burnt down, and they were donated to the state of New Jersey that stuck them in the park there. But what's fascinating about the colonnade is that right behind the colonnade, there's a giant commemoration plaque that's somewhere around there. We don't know exactly where. There is a common grave of British and American soldiers who fell at the battle. This is a relatively recent, actually very recent, statue of John Witherspoon right on the Princeton campus. And if some graduate students get their way, it's going to be pulled off of the Princeton campus, but he's there for now. And now we go into the modern art. And again, I'm just going to go through these quickly. We've been doing a lot of this, but here's Grant Wood, the Daughters of the American Revolution in front of Loitza. So Bobby and my friends in Morristown, there, Bobby and Pat, there you go. There's our foremothers. So now we have Roy Lichtenstein. I'm just going to go through all of these. Here you've got all of these different renditions. And when I said at the beginning of this presentation, you've got really the artists sending a message. Well, these are all modern artists using the famous Loitza to send particular messages. In some cases, it's a political message or of social justice. Here, the resurgence of the people. This is the Native Americans crossing the Delaware. Here you've got George Washington Carver crossing the Delaware. This was, I don't know what Walter Cara was. I don't know what a lot of these are, but you know, you can find these all over the place. These are Texans crossing the Delaware. I don't know what these cartoon characters are, but they are, you know, well-known gaming art. So again, all of these different things, you notice these all come from that famous Loitza painting. Muppets crossing the Delaware. Klingons crossing the Delaware. I've forgotten the name of this. This is some TV show. But lastly, I just want to quickly go through the museum shop here. These are all book covers of the 10 Crucial Days. So here you've got books that use the art of the 10 Crucial Days for telling their story. These are some children's books on the 10 Crucial Days. And of course, the merchandise can go on forever. So there you've got, and one of the pieces that I love right there in the upper right, that is in the museum, in the State Museum. That's just magnificent. That was created for the centennial. And those are quilts, by the way. These two objects are quilts. If you want to learn more about art of the 10 Crucial Days, I recommend these books, Paul Stady's book of Arms and Artists. You learn all about these artists, Jane Kaminsky, and Richard Brookhiser has just written a biography of John Trumbull that's just come out. So thank you all.